All right, so today we're going to work on special right triangles. Our learning target is I can find the missing side length in a 45, 45, 90 and 30, 60, 90 triangle. So this section is going to incorporate the proportions that we set up last chapter. Because we're going to work with triangles that have 45, 45, 90 as their degrees, and then 30, 60, 90. So since every triangle is going to have this particular pattern of angles, that means they're going to be similar, because remember, we only need two angles to be congruent in two triangles for them to be similar. So we're going to teach it as similar triangles. The leg is always going to be represented by a 1 in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, and the hypotenuse will always be the square root of 2. So legs, remember, are the two pieces that aren't the hypotenuse, and in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, we know that it's isosceles. Okay, it's a right angle as our vertex, and then the two legs are congruent to each other. So we have a 1 and a 1, and then square root of 2 as the hypotenuse. So I kind of goofed up. I wish I would have made these boxes a little bigger, so please bear with me. So we're going to set up a proportion. And here's going to be our similar triangle here every time. So we have a square root of 2 across from the 90 degrees, and then a 1 across from both of those. So here we go. So we're going to try and find x. Okay, I know that x corresponds, so if this is a 45 degree, it's across from the 45. What's across from our 45 here? 1. That ratio is going to be equal to, now we have to use the 8 here. 8 over 8 is also across from 45, so across from 1. So looking at this, I know that x is 8. Now you won't see me do like that again, because in the future we'll just recognize that these two are congruent. However, when I'm trying to find y is the hypotenuse, so it corresponds to the square root of 2. That's going to be the same ratio as 8 over 1. So now in this case, we're going to cross multiply. So y is going to be equal to 8 times the square root of 2. 8 times the square root of 2 is 11.3. So there's our final answer. Okay, 11.3. So now we move on. We have another 45, 45, 90 triangle. X is our hypotenuse. Y is our leg. Since this leg is 25, it's going to be congruent to y, so this is 25. Now to find x. X corresponds with our similar triangle over here. It's the hypotenuse, so it's going to be over the hypotenuse, equals 25 over, what's across from 45? 1. When we cross multiply, we get x is equal to 25 square root of 2. So 25 square root 2 is 35.4. All right, let's skip down here where I have a little more room to work with. Remember, we're still working with this model triangle. We have a 45, 45, 90. They want us to find xz, so I'm going to call that x, and yz, y. So x should be nice and easy to us. X is a leg. Legs in a 45, 45, 90 are congruent, so x must be 7. Now y is the hypotenuse, so it corresponds to the hypotenuse up here, square root of 2. That's going to be equal to 7 over, 7 is a leg, so that corresponds to 1. When we cross multiply, we get y equals 7 square root of 2. Simplify that by plugging it into our calculator, 9.9. Last but not least, now they want JK and LK, which are the same exact thing. So I know x over 1 is going to be equal to 12 square root of 2 over the square root of 2 is the hypotenuse. So that is going to go square root of 2. Now, we're not working with these rules very much, but these are just going to cancel out, and we're going to get x is equal to 12. If you don't know that, if you're not familiar with those rules, 12 square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2, 12. So either way works for you. X is equal to 12, both JK and LK are 12. All right. So we have two more with this particular type, and then we'll go into our 30, 60, 90. We want to find B and C. B, very easy, is 9. It's the same as the other leg. C is a little different. So I'm going to draw my 45, 45, 90 triangle here. These are congruent. They both represent 1. So C over square root of 2 is equal to 9 over 1. Cross multiply, C equals 9 square root of 2, which is just 12.7. Find the leg of a 45, 45, 90 triangle with a hypotenuse of length 10. These are congruent, 90 degrees. We have 10 across from here. I'm trying to solve for a leg. X over. Now, since these are congruent, both of these are 45. Okay, x over 1 equals 10 over square root of 2. This is just x equals 10 over the square root of 2. Simplify. 10 divided by square root 2, 7.1. Okay, just to recap, I recognize that 8 over 1 is simply x, so I didn't have to do this. If we cross multiplied, we would have got the square root of 2x equals 10, and then I would have ended up just dividing by the square root of 2, which is what you saw me do. Okay, we will have to do that process in the future, but not with this case. So now we move on to 30, 60, 90. These are going to have a completely different ratio. The shorter leg will be represented by 1. The longer leg will be represented by the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse will be 2. You will never have to memorize these. I will always give you a 30, 60, 90, and a 45, 45, 90 to base everything off of. So now we have to go back a couple chapters. Shorter leg. How do I know which one's the shorter leg? Well, we learned that the shortest leg is going to be across from the smallest angle. So the smallest angle is 30. So across from that 30 is a 1. The longer leg is going to be across from the 60, square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is 2. So all of these triangles that we're about to do are similar to this one, and that's how we'll set up our proportions. So I'm going to start by solving for x. X is across from the 60. What is across from the 60 in my model? Square root of 3. That's going to be equal to, I have to use this 5. This 5 is across from the hidden 30. What's across from the 30 here? 1. When I cross multiply, I get x equals 5 square root of 3. 5 square root of 3 is 8.7. Now I have to do the same with y, except y is the hypotenuse, so it goes with 2. That is equal to 5 over 1. When we cross multiply this time, we get y equals 5 times 2, which is 10. Let me see. So I'm going to skip to these problems here just because I'll have a little more room. Those are just extras that I put there. What are P, Q, and R? I'm going to say PQ is Y, or X, and PR is Y. I'll write these on the triangle. So I'm going to draw our model at the top so I can use these for the rest of them. 30, 60 across from the 90 is 2, across from the 30 is 1, and then square root of 3. So we're solving for x. X over x is across from the 60. So I look at my model. What is across from the 60 here? Square root of 3. That's going to be equal to, I have to grab my 6 here, 6, which is across from the 30, which corresponds to 1. I cross multiply and I get 6 equal, or x equals 6, square root of 3, 10.4. Now I have to solve for y. Y over, so y is our hypotenuse, so it corresponds to 2, the hypotenuse here, equals 6 over 1. I cross multiply, y is equal to 12. Now this one, uv and tv, so x and y. uv is x, tv is y. So I'm solving for x. So x is across from 30. In my model, across from 30 is 1. That's going to be equal to, now they gave me this 9 square root of 3. Okay, that's across from the 60. So across from the 60 is square root of 3. I cross multiply, or I can recognize that these are going to cancel out and x is going to be 9. If you don't recognize that, we would get square root of 3x equals 9 square root of 3. I divide by the square root of 3. X equals, they cross out here, 9. Y corresponds to, since it's the hypotenuse, 2. That's going to be equal to 9 square root of 3 over square root of 3. Excuse me. So when I cross multiply here, I get the square root of 3 times y equals, okay, now the rule is you just multiply the 2 times the 9, but I don't think you guys remember that. So 2 times 9 square root 3 is equal to 31.2. Now I know I need to divide by the square root of 3. Y is equal to 18. All right. So it's just that over and over and over. I'll do a few more problems. I have about 2 more minutes left up in my video, so stop it if you want to. But I'm going to keep doing a couple of these. D and E. I want to find D. D is across from 60 degrees. So I look up, across from 60 is always the square root of 3. That's going to be equal to the known side of 7 over 1, cross multiply, D equals 7, square root of 3. Go to my calculator, 12.1. Same thing, E over, E is the hypotenuse, which corresponds to a 2. That's going to be equal to the 7 over 1. I cross multiply, E equals 14. The legs of a 30, 60, 90 triangle, hypotenuse has a length of 10. So we have 90 degree angle. One of them is 30, one of them is 60. The hypotenuse is 10. If I'm trying to find x and y, x over, my x is across from the 30, so that corresponds with a 1, equals my 10 is the hypotenuse, it corresponds to 2. Cross multiply, I get 2x equals 10, x is equal to 5. Now I do the same with my y. My y goes and corresponds to the square root of 3 equals 10 over 2. Cross multiply, 2y equals 10 square root of 3. Divide by 2. Y equals, I can reduce 5 square root of 3. 5, excuse me. 5 square root 3 is 8.7. Now, some of you are going to pick up on an easier pattern than that. That is okay. You are welcome to follow the pattern that you see. I have found that I reach more students when I do it using similar triangles.